Hello, this is Michael Smith, and this is our final discussion board. And we want to talk today something about the size and scope of government. As we have seen from the men that we've studied this term, there's a great deal of discussion in the early days about different visions for America. And I think a lot of that had to do with the influences that came from the past. In Jefferson's case, who led the Anti-Federalists, who were more conservative, whose vision for America was that there'd be small yeoman farms and farmers who would take time off to go and make laws and come back to their farms and never grow really beyond just a farm agrarian economy. Was influenced by the Greeks, of course, and their ideals of the republic being Athens, smaller groups, and much more able to manage that. The other group, the Federalists, of course, with John Adams and George Washington, were much more influenced by the Romans, who saw things on a much larger scale and a much more centralized government with administrations and things that to make, to guarantee people their rights of liberty. The three articles that I chose to share with you, I think, are very important, and I've enjoyed reading those. One is by Luke Mayville, and it's called it's called John Adams and the Fear of an American Oligarchy. Adams wrote a couple of books after his time in Europe as a diplomat. In fact, he kind of questioned and caused a lot of consternation among his founding father buddies about whether they'd made the right decision or not, and whether a monarchy was a much better suited role of government for human beings than, say, a republic or a democracy. And he opens his book with kind of a turn away from Republican values. And so that was quite caused a lot of consternation among his friends. And I think it was interesting to read that he had some second thoughts. And I'm sure these men did the longest day that they lived. They rethought their decisions way back when and wondered if they had made the right decision. Jerry Mashaw wrote the second article, and it's called Reluctant Nationalist, Federal Administration and Administrative Law in the Republican Era from 1801 to 1829. And he raises the specter of the issues between Federalists and the Anti-Federalists over the different views of government. And he makes an interesting statement. He says, when George Washington and John Adams were elected president and vice president, that they were the only two employees of the United States. By the time Jefferson came in 1800, we had 3,000 civilian employees. We had a pretty large military, and we had a lot of contractors. So the government had grown just in that length of time quite large by their standards. Jefferson believed that when the Republicans were elected in 1800, that he was convinced his election would save the country. And despite his Republican era, he sought to restrict growth, but the problems associated with having to stitch together a country developing centralized power and developing a national ideology made that very difficult. And so in the end, for the sake of the country, certain changes had to be made. The third article by Arthur Berzelius is called The Revolutionary Conservatism of Jefferson's Small Republics. And he explores the idea that we have abandoned Jefferson's principles, and whether we've abandoned them so far that they would never be able to come back to an actual idea of a republic. But he also raises the idea that maybe there are smaller countries in the world that haven't grown quite as large as we have, where republicanism will still work. And of course, we probably don't think of a country today in terms of republicanism, but it has grown into this behemoth of size. And so it raises a very interesting thought as we think about this final discussion on the size of country, on the scope of country, and if it can become ungovernable. And of course, in recent days, we've asked ourselves those same questions. We're still asking ourselves today the same questions that Jefferson and Adams did at the end of their term. So thank you so much for the time that we've had together. I've enjoyed the 8 weeks and particularly enjoyed looking at our founding fathers in new ways. And I look forward to seeing you in class again, maybe in the future. God bless.